Is really to go over getting a better clarity of your role, understanding your boundaries between your role and other leadership teams' roles, as well as where we're all going to have some synergy. Again, please keep in mind that these are all brand new roles, as you see here, and that there's going to be some ebb and flow, and that what may work in 6 months from now may not work 6 months later. So just making sure that you're flexible within your leadership position and what may fall under your role. So as you can see, we have two different types of leadership teams. So we have an executive leadership team as well as different department needs of our leadership team. Within our department needs, we have the day-to-day operational team needs, followed by our training needs. So let's talk about more of the executive team. The executive leadership team is led by Laura. Within that team, you have Linda and Holly. This team is solely responsible for developing the talent of the coaching department and ensuring the best practices are in place for tobacco cessation and technology solutions, and they're being implemented within our department. This team is solely responsible for leading the huddles, syncs, and grand rounds. They're also responsible for making sure we're scaling our team and also scaling back our team when we have either big sales or we have a drop in the number of pivoters that are onboarding into our platform. They're also really responsible for making sure that all training needs are being met, whether that's brand new, someone that's onboarding, to someone that's been here quite a while and we're working on their continued education, and or just various areas of their coaching skills. It's going to be mainly your responsibility to work with your manager on a day-to-day basis and making sure that your needs are met. So your manager may be Linda, your manager may be Holly. So you're going to be working with them directly on making sure your needs are being met and that you have all the tools to manage your staff effectively. Most of your questions should be directed directly to your manager. That includes if you have questions about training, you have questions about community, you have questions about different educational opportunities, bring those up during your one-on-ones with your manager. This team is also responsible for mainly the department needs at the very highest level. So making sure that there's coaching protocols, policies, and procedures are in place, and that we are constantly updating the portal as our team's needs expand, and working with the engineering and the design team to make sure that these are implemented in an effective and efficient way. This team is also responsible for setting metrics for our team, for our department level, as well as how that will fit in with the various company needs, as well as setting the culture. Now, it's all of our responsibility to provide an enjoyable and safe work environment. However, as your senior leadership team, it's our responsibility to lead by example so that you can also hold true to your values and show that your behaviors are in line with our ultimate department values. This team is also responsible for working with other cross departments. So working sure to ensure that if there's any content needs, whether that's regarding website, the app, the sensor, that those are being met, and that we are constantly translating what the coaching message is across all of those various aspects. We're also responsible for working directly with the clinical marketing and product team as needed, as it relates to how coaching can be involved and or providing educational opportunities to those departments. We're also responsible for onboarding any new staff to make sure they know the importance and the role of coaching and what we do, as well as working with any new client, whether that's a client onboarding call or client training, as well as client metrics and reports. It's also our responsibility to make sure that we're meeting the highest industry standards and that we are up to date as a team on what those standards are with respect to cigarettes, vape, and smokeless tobacco products. Additionally, this team will also manage a small caseload as they become more senior and have more responsibilities. The caseload is much smaller. However, we still want to make sure that they are understanding the needs of the team at every level, and that means at the basic coaching level as well. So how do you interact with this team? Well, like I said before, you're going to work with your manager to make sure that any of your questions on how to manage is being met. But you're also going to be working in these huddles. So it's your responsibility if you have any agenda items that you're addressing them to the appropriate person. So for the huddle itself, we want to make sure if you have any staff needs that you want to make sure that get across, that everyone is translated, you bring those up to your senior lead. As far as grand rounds, any of those agenda items are brought up to your head trainer. And anything related to the sync that is brought up to either your manager or your trainer, and that will be translated up to the director. So when in doubt, you go to your manager for questions, and they will be making the appropriate judgment calls of who needs to get the information. You're also responsible for ensuring that any department policy, protocols, or tasks are being completed and implemented by each of your individual team members. Again, that gets into the day-to-day operations of working with your team. You're also responsible for ensuring that your team understands how their goals are in line with the department's objectives and metrics, as well as making sure that they're implementing things as needed and that hopefully they're also walking the talk of the team culture. Occasionally, you will also be asked to participate in coaching projects as your time becomes available. Let's move on to the development and training team. This training team is led by Holly, and she has 3 direct reports. This team is primarily responsible for onboarding, community, and grand rounds. With the assistance from the senior lead, the head trainer will also be primarily responsible for updating all onboarding content and training and learning from each of the cohorts. So think about when a group of folks come in, we really want to make sure that we are learning from those cohorts. That learning may come directly from you, and that's why it gets trickled to your manager, which may be Linda, and that'll eventually get translated up to Holly's team. So this team has 2 really big objectives within onboarding. Their first objective is make sure that everyone that's a new coach understands that they have operational training needs in the form of coach shadowing as well as group learning sessions. Not only that's outside of the Confluence training courses, and they're also responsible for making sure that there are operational reviews. So making sure that they're meeting our expectations of what needs to happen in the portal, that needs to happen in their day-to-day flow. And they're also responsible for making sure that if they have any reviews where there needs to be improvements, that those improvements are made and implemented within 1 to 2 weeks. This team is also responsible for developing the community. They'll be working closely with product and marketing on providing content to users with the latest app updates and building community responsiveness by providing thought-provoking exercises and other various community posts. Additionally, they'll be responsible for monitoring the adherence to community guidelines. Lastly, this team will provide data updates as well as pinging other coaches on quit outreach requests. Lastly, this team, as you know, will be responsible for creating monthly educational opportunities in the forms of grand rounds. So how do you interact with this team? Well, the biggest thing here is if there's any educational gaps with respect to onboarding or CE credits or understanding where there might be some knowledge gaps with respect to TTS or coaching skills, you really inform your manager. Your manager's responsibility is going to be working directly with the head of the development and training team to make sure that gets translated up. There's going to be a lot more of you, and there's only 2 of them. So we want to make sure that all the information gets collected and then disseminated appropriately. Okay? You're also really responsible for making sure that your team is really highlighting community and that they're following through by following up on quit outreaches. Lastly, you're responsible as an individual to attend and lead by example of participating in group discussions in any type of training, but particularly within grand rounds. It's also your responsibility to make sure your team participates and shows up. Now, let's start with your direct team. This is the coaching operations team. This team is led by Linda, who has 2 managers, and one manager is going to be solely responsible for part-time folks. The other is going to have a mixture between part-time and full-time staff. Eventually, we'll have a part-time lead as well as a full staff lead. Your primary role is to manage your team's day-to-day operations and their needs. You'll make sure they have all the things they need to perform their job at the highest standard. Additionally, you'll be responsible for measuring the quality of your team's coaching performance. You'll actively participate in monthly leadership huddles, and in the first 3 months or so, we'll really center those around your management training. But you'll also be responsible for your own CE credits, making sure that you are staying up to standards within your own coaching skills and tobacco skills, but also understanding where your team is at so that can get translated up and making sure that we have opportunities to make sure our team is always staying compliant within their coaching adherence to their certifications. Lastly, you will also be managing your caseload as well, as you'll have a higher caseload of about 65 to 75%, and you will also be reviewed by the leadership team of your quality assurance. Now, keep in mind, your caseload will continue to decrease as you get more staff. So how do you interact? So how does the senior leadership team interact with you? Okay, well, you'll have one-on-ones with your manager to discuss any opportunities, like I said, and gaps of workflow, of educational needs That will get translated again to the development and the training team. And they'll build out this in grand rounds, or they'll co-collaborate together or create special teams on expanding advanced training. Your leads will also provide you one-on-one training on how to conduct the quality quarterly review in the areas of operations, coaching, and TTS skills. And eventually they'll also spot check some of your work. So as you can see, we're going to be all intertwined together. So there's a lot of room for synergy here, but there's also some boundaries. So like I said, when in doubt, always go to your manager for direct questions and understanding where your boundaries lie, even within your peer. So if you're an associate coach or coach lead, understanding where those lie, as well as if you're a senior leader, a trainer, really making sure you understand your boundaries. And if you ever have questions, to go directly to your manager. Looking forward to working with you all.